at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Friday, January 17th. As always, I'm here to be your MBFF. I will be your MBFF all weekend, even though we're not here. And Monday is Martin Luther King holiday. I'll be on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, where you can watch the monologue right now. People are watching it right now. Or you can drop me an email anytime, dean@deanofradio.com. That's DEAN at deanofradio.com. By the way, if you're in the New York area, Sunday night, doing a big comedy show, the Big Brown Comedy Show that I produce every few months. Really great lineup. Nina, who works on the show, will be there. Rami Youssef, who just won a Golden Globe 2 weeks ago for his show, Rami, is going to be in the show. It's at the comic strip on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And if you're interested, Brown Paper Tickets has the tickets. Or you can email me and I'll send you information on it, dean@deanofradio.com. But it'll be a great show Sunday. So, 291 days to the most important election of our life. That is the day we will remove Donald Trump. Because I don't think the Senate will do it. Highly unlikely. It's also unlikely they're even going to consider the evidence sincerely. I mean, that's part of the problem here. But it's going to be up to us. I want to talk about Lev Parnas and some other developments. But first, Stephen Colbert helps us get into Lev Parnas' testimony last night. Here's first on Parnas saying, no, if you don't give us what we want on Biden, no soup for you. Here's clip number one.
Parnas made it clear that Trump threatened Ukraine and not just their military aid.
Mayor Giuliani, Rudy, told me after, meeting at the president at the White House, he called me. His message was, it wasn't just military aid, it was all aid. Basically, the relationships would be sour, that we would stop giving him any kind of aid.
We're talking all the aid, military aid, humanitarian aid, lemonade, Band-Aid, farm aid, milkmaid, Dennis Quaid. Now,
No aid whatsoever. And then Lev Parnas, he also went on CNN last night with Anderson Cooper, shared how he was part of the Trump cult. He idolized Donald Trump. So here's Lev Parnas explaining it. Clip number 2, please.
Now, this was not easy for Parnas to reveal all of this because he said he had special feelings for Trump.
You loved President Trump.
I loved him. I mean, when the FBI came to my house to raid him, my wife felt embarrassed because they said I had a shrine to him. I mean, I had pictures all over. I mean, I idolized him. I mean, I thought he was the savior.
Yeah. I can understand that. Because every time I look at Trump, I say, Jesus. Oh.
Nice joke. Well delivered. Good timing by Stephen Colbert. So, Lev Parnas, just to remind everybody, is Trump and Rudy Giuliani's BFF, their associate, who has been indicted on campaign finance fraud, just like Michael Cohen. But in the case of Lev Parnas, what he was doing, formed a shell company with his buddy and were funneling money to Republicans that came from places no one knows where it came from, but we know there was a Russian businessman cited in the complaint, not named, but he was funneling money to Republicans to help them. And one of the Republicans he funneled money to, Congressman Pete Sessions, who was then a congressman from Texas, his ask was help us fire Marie Yovanovitch, the U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine, who was standing in the way of Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani's corrupt plan. Just unreal. And so we just heard the clip of how if there's no announcement on Biden, there's no relationship between the U.S. and the Ukraine. You're getting nothing. You're not getting military aid. You're not getting the State Department aid. And then there was more. As Lev Parnas, and this is a serious clip, this is from Rachel Maddow, where he talks about the importance. And I think this is, I want to play it because I think it is so vital to understanding what's going on. Having President-elect Zelensky in the Ukraine, who was then president-elect, have a meeting with Trump or show up at his inauguration or Pence show up at his inauguration is so strategically important for a man who is literally was a comedian, an elected president. He wants to show that he's serious. He's at a war with Russia. He wants to show the Russians and Putin, look what I've got here. I've got Pence or Trump here. So on some level, this is actually more than the funds because it's a show of support on the world stage. And Parnas makes it very compelling. So here is clip number 3, him explaining how important it is and why Vice President Mike Pence did not go as planned, because it was completely planned. He was going to the Ukraine for the inauguration. What happened? So here's clip number 3.
Because at that time, you have to understand the way Ukraine is. For President Zelensky, winning on that platform, being a young president and not really having any experience, the number one thing, and being at war with Russia at the time, the number one thing for them was not even aid. And I know it sounds crazy, but it was more of a support from the president. Yeah. By having a White House visit, by having a big inauguration, by having all the dignitaries there. That was the key. And at that time, they were already aware because of their conversations with with the embassy that Vice President Pence was supposed to come to the inauguration. It was already discussed, and they were planning it out. They were just working on days that would be good for him. Mm-hmm. At our meeting, I was very, very stern. It was a heated conversation from our part to him, basically telling him what needs to be done. Basically me. And in the conversation, I told him that if the announcement was the key at that time because of the inauguration, that Pence would not show up, nobody would show up to his inauguration. Unless he announced an investigation into Joe Biden, no U.S. officials, particularly Vice President Mike Pence, would not come to the Zelensky inauguration. Particularly Vice President Mike Pence. So I called back and said, no go. And I remember really going, okay, they'll see. And basically the next day, Pence, to my awareness, Trump called up and said to make sure Pence doesn't go there.
That's literally what happened. That's all backed up by congressional testimony, what he said. Is that unbelievable? Now we know the backstory. We know, according to the testimony of Jennifer Williams, who works in the State Department, but she works for Mike Pence. She's Mike Pence's top Russian advisor. She testified to Congress that she was surprised to receive a phone call from an assistant to Pence, the chief of staff, saying, hey, the plans to go to the Ukraine are over. And didn't know what happened. Well, we know what happened now. If this is true, just assuming it's true, Parnas tells Rudy Giuliani they're not going to make the announcement. Rudy goes, you know what? We'll show them. Literally the next day, it's canceled, the meeting. What did we find out? Jennifer Williams testified that when she asked about why is this being canceled so suddenly, she was told, and this is under oath, she testified, Donald Trump had directed Pence to skip the event. Did not know the reason why. So again, it is backing up what Parnas, in that case, he was actually assuming that Trump had told him. He was not aware, but the testimony backs this up. And in fact, testimony of officials at our embassy in the Ukraine were blindsided. They thought Pence was coming. All of a sudden, he's not coming up. And it is pretty clear, even before this, the reason Pence's trip was canceled was likely part of this scheme. Now with Parnas, that is new information. That does connect a new dot. If Parnas is telling the truth, and that's for people to decide based on his own credibility, you can assess it on your own. But if he is telling the truth, now we have just laid out for us the quid pro quo, the something for something. In this case, it's a meeting or Vice President Pence going to the Ukraine for this really important meeting and showing Zelensky that he stands with him on the world stage. And because Zelensky would not commit to just announcing the investigation to Biden, this official act of the U.S. government was canceled. And just so people get it, bribery, federal bribery, one of the definitions under our federal law is that a public official directly or indirectly demands something with an improper motive, something of value, anything of value, in return for the performance of an official act. So in this case, the official act was Vice President Pence going to the Ukraine to stand with Zelensky. The official act is there. The condition for it is give me something that helps my campaign personally, which is an announcement to the investigation, Joe Biden. That's bribery. That's completely clear. Later, I won't play more clips from Parnas now, maybe later. Later, they talked about U.S. Ambassador Maria Yovanovitch, who turns out to be so important in this. And I kept saying that something is wrong here. Why are they going after her so much? He talks about last night that Trump wanted to fire her for months. In fact, to Parnas' face, he said, we're going to fire her. And Pompeo didn't act on it when first told. Apparently, people in the State Department liked her a great deal. Maddow asked Parnas, do you believe that part of the motivation to get rid of Ambassador Yovanovitch is because she was in the way of the effort to get the government of the Ukraine to announce investigations of Joe Biden? Parnas' answer, that was the only motivation. Maddow responds, that was the only motivation. Parnas repeats, that there was no other motivation. So she stood in the way for whatever reason. Maybe she was talking to Zelensky. He's like, don't get involved in domestic politics. Don't do it. But in their view, she was standing in the way. And we also learned from him last night, Parnas, that this conversation with the Ukrainians began before Zelensky was elected. The president before, Poroshenko, he met and talked to Poroshenko's people and wanted the same thing during the campaign in 2018 when Poroshenko was thinking of running and said, look, if you do this announcement, Trump will help you, publicly help you. Again, an official action of government in return for a personal favor for the president to help his 2020 campaign. He also talked about Bill Barr, saying Bill Barr knew everything. And, I don't have documents to support that, so I have questions about that. The other stuff is pretty clear. So since this is looking so bad, Donald Trump today beefs up his defense team. And he adds 2 people who are well known. He added a few others, but the well-known ones that are getting the headlines are Kenneth Starr, we all know him from the Clinton Special Counsel, and Alan Dershowitz. First of all, I find this interesting. Here's Trump in 1999 when defending Bill Clinton against impeachment, slamming Kenneth Starr on MSNBC. It's a quick clip, but I just find it amusing. Clip number 4, please.
I think Ken Starr is a lunatic. I really think that Ken Starr is a disaster. I hated the way the president handled it. It was a long and terrible process. I really think that Ken Starr was terrible.
Ken Starr, terrible lunatic. He's my lawyer now. And people can switch, but here's the common denominator in all of this. Donald Trump defended Bill Clinton in the case with Monica Lewinsky. And now Trump has picked 2 people, Kenneth Starr and Alan Dershowitz, to defend him. Both of these men are sexual assault enablers, protectors, and one is actually accused directly of sexual assault. He denies it, but he's accused of it. And I think, to be blunt, this is part of Trump's attraction to these men. He could have had any lawyer, frankly. It's Dershowitz has been defending him a lot, and Kenneth Starr goes back and forth. Kenneth Starr has been critical of Trump more than Alan Dershowitz on Fox News. But I think deep down, Trump likes men who stand with men against women who are abused or sexually assaulted. And just to remind people of a few things. First of all, Kenneth Starr had become the president of Baylor University. In 2016, there was a scandal. He was fired. What happened there? There was an investigation found the university mishandled accusations of sexual assault against football players. According to a report by an outside law firm commissioned by the university, it said the administration of the school looked the other way when certain Baylor football players were accused of sex crimes and some were actually convicted in criminal court. The report noted, quote, actions by university administrators directly discouraged some complainants from reporting or participating in student conduct processes, and one instance constituted retaliation against a complainant for reporting sexual assault. And critics say that the reason Ken Starr turned a blind eye to this is for the sake of the football team and his own fundraising. Because as a president of a university, you might get it. It's not just administration raising funds for private schools. There's a big part of it. Well, he'd been raising a lot of money from the success of the football team and building a big football stadium for the Baylor University. So having a big sex scandal in the middle of this would have undermined his efforts. So the implication being that he was less than vigilant in protecting these women's rights, these women who were sexually assaulted, because he wanted to protect the university. And he was fired. There's no doubt he was fired. Then he later resigned as chancellor and gave up his tenure as a law professor as well. So you've got that guy who turned a blind eye and is arguably an enabler of sexual assault. And then there's Alan Dershowitz. the man who defended Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, as an attorney, I believe every person has the right to counsel. It's guaranteed in our Constitution. I don't believe, as a lawyer, you have to say yes to everybody. And in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, who was a pedophile and sexually abused countless women, Alan Dershowitz was friends with Jeffrey Epstein before the charges. And so Jeffrey Epstein gets represented by Alan Dershowitz. When Dershowitz took the case, and this is all public reporting, I'm not presuming anything, when Dershowitz took the case in the mid-2000s, he went to work discrediting some of the young women who went to the police and say they were abused and assaulted and raped by Jeffrey Epstein, including sending a letter about a 16-year-old victim of Jeffrey Epstein to the lead criminal investigator in Florida there, calling into question her character, and he took information from social media attacking her credibility. And since then, in more recent years, Alan Dershowitz has been accused of involvement in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring by an attorney for one of Epstein's victims. And the victim was Virginia Roberts, Giuffre. I think it's Giuffre. I might be mispronouncing her name. She said she was trafficked by Epstein to Dershowitz to have sex with when she was underage. Dershowitz denies it. He responded publicly by calling her a prostitute and a bad mother. This woman, Giuffre, is now suing Dershowitz for defamation. Meanwhile, another woman, Sarah Ransom, says in court documents she also had sex with Dershowitz at Epstein's behest, but she was not underage then. She was an adult at the time. But it gives you a sense he was living in the world of Jeffrey Epstein and this circle of women and trafficking. Now, he denies it. He's not been convicted. Everyone's entitled to the presumption of innocence, but there's no doubt he knew Dershowitz. Dershowitz knew Epstein. They were friends before this, and as a lawyer, him demeaning the women, the young girls who came forward and attacking their character, that is all verified. He did that. That is despicable on its face. I don't care. Don't represent a client if you've got to attack the victim and slut shame victims. But these two men, enablers, protectors of sexual assault, they're the perfect fit for Donald Trump. This is who he wants as his lawyers. These are the guys he can hang out with and make fun of the Me Too movement. And let's be clear, Donald Trump, he's actually far more consistent on things than people realize. And I think we understand that now. One of the areas he's most consistent, and it's an area that I've brought up on the show many times, and I hope the 2020 candidates make this a theme in their campaign, in addition to policy issues, is that Donald Trump, as a candidate and as president, in every situation where there's a female victim of sexual assault, harassment, or abuse, he has always taken the side of the man over the woman and has never shown even an ounce of concern for the women who have come forward. Zero. Nothing. In fact, he has mocked them and ridiculed them publicly, making their lives even difficult. I'll give you some examples, and not from years ago. In July 2016, in the middle of the campaign, Roger Ailes, fired from Fox News. He was the head of the news. There was head of Fox News because of countless women coming forward saying he had sexually harassed them. Gretchen Carlson filed a lawsuit. We found out after he was fired that Fox News paid millions, not thousands, millions of dollars to women to settle quietly these claims. And what did Donald Trump say when asked about it shortly after Ailes was fired, after we knew all of that? He defended Ailes, attacked the women, saying Ailes is a good guy, and then said, some of the women that are complaining, I know how much Ailes has helped them. Now all of a sudden they are saying these horrible things about him. It's very sad because he's a very good person. What a scumbag Donald Trump is. As president, he defended Roy Moore when young women who were at the time children, and he said he had hit on them. Trump stood with Roy Moore. And I think one of the worst, two horrible moments. One was in February 2018, when we all learned that Trump's aide, Rob Porter, was alleged by his two ex-wives, Kobe Holderson and Jennifer Porter, that he had physically abused them. And Holderson said he was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive. She even shared the photo of her with a black eye that she said Rob Porter gave her, that we all saw it. And his second wife, Jennifer Willoughby, said the same thing. He physically abused me. What was Trump's reaction? Any sympathy for the women? Anything? An ounce of it? Nothing. Nothing. Instead, he said, defending Porter, quote, I think you have to remember that he says he is innocent. Adding, he worked very hard. We wish him well. Not even a hint of sympathy. We saw a picture of the one wife, ex-wife with a black eye. Not even a hint. Nothing. And then the worst, of course, was during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing when Dr. Christine Ford testified, courageously shared how she had been sexually assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh when they were teenagers. And what did Donald Trump do? He went to a rally a night or two later. And for the enjoyment of his base, he mocked a victim of sexual assault. And here is that clip, and it's despicable, but I have to play it to remind people. Clip number 5.
What he's going through. 36 years ago, this happened. I had one beer, right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was? Nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know.
What kind of man goes to a crowd and ridicules a victim of sexual assault just to get an applause line? What kind of vile person does that? Oh, simple. That person's name is Donald Trump, the leader of the Republican Party. And to listen to the crowd cheer. This is vile and despicable. So, Kenneth Starr and Alan Dershowitz are the perfect fit for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump had credible, respectable men who had defended women and stood up for women when they were victims, he would have never hired them. Never. But these are the people Donald Trump likes. And what I'm happy about, at least, is that the women of America are seeing this. Donald Trump's approval rating, even this week among women, is down to 35-36%. This is well below the 41-42% he had in exit polls of all women. Of course, 52% of white women supported Trump. But overall, support of women by Trump has gone down. In fact, it is those women, often suburban white women, who have given us the victories in 2018 and 19. And picking Ken Starr and Alan Dershowitz with this track record, because this is all getting played in the media now. I wish it was getting played more. Not going to help him with women. It's going to hurt him with women. And it should. Donald Trump is a level of it's beyond misogyny. It's beyond sexism. It is despicable and vile. There's nothing redeeming about this man whatsoever. To mock victims of sexual assault, to praise the men who beat women and demean the women, it's just like Alan Dershowitz with Jeffrey Epstein's case. At least Alan Dershowitz didn't do it to a crowd and get people cheering and laughing at the victims. He did an illegal proceeding. So at least that on some level in the spectrum of hideousness, that's a little less. I get that. With Trump, vile. So, look, it's Friday. This is sort of the lull before the trial. It looks like Tuesday they're going to have opening. I'm not sure about opening statements, frankly. They're going to have motions. We know that'll start off first. We'll see how this plays out. We'll probably get a whole schedule of when briefs have to be written and delivered. There might not be actual testimony or arguments for days. I shouldn't say testimony, just arguments for days after that. But look, it's Friday. Let's reflect on the week here with what we've seen with impeachment. I'd love to hear from you. First of all, what do you think of Ken Starr and Alan Dershowitz? Are they the great pick here for Trump? Are they a good fit? Do you find it as vile as I do that Donald Trump would pick men who are involved in protecting men who abuse women? I'd love to hear from you. You're my guest at the top of the hour. Glenn Kirshner is going to join us at the top of the hour. Former federal prosecutor. See him on MSNBC. Great guy. 866-997-4748. Give me a call. I'll be right back after this.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
I think Trump clips that they plan